Hello, everyone. Steve Scott here, and thanks for tuning in again to another edition of our Kaizen online learning program. Welcome to the new people who might be joining us, and welcome back to the people who have been here with me for some time in this program. Um, let's Our subject at hand today are the actually three elements, three and a half elements of making any technique, any skill work, and those would be Kuzushi, Tsukuri, Kake, and a third and a half, not necessarily a fourth element, but a third and a half that um, I think is very important is Kime. And we'll discuss these three and a half or four elements of how to make every technique work. Now, let me preface all this by saying that for years, those of us in the judo community have been looking at Kazushi, Tsukuri, and Kake, unbalancing, fitting in, and throwing in that sense, just in throwing. Okay, and that's great. Professor Kano, Jigoro Kano, developed the concept of Kazushi as an adjunct to his training in Kito-Ryu Jiu-Jitsu back in the very early days of the Kodokan. So we can trace all this great information, and it is very great information, back to Jigoro Kano himself and the early research he did, and the continuing research that has been done through the years at the Kodokan and adherents of Kodokan Judo. But we don't just limit it to throwing. We can include this in any phase of ground fighting or any type of grappling as well. So when I talk about breaking the balance and doing things like this, we will also be discussing, in a sense, ground fighting because very similar things happen on the ground. So you can apply these elements of Kazushi, Tsukuri, Kake, and Kime into ground fighting as well as throwing. They have great application in both. But again, traditionally, judo, the judo world and the martial arts world in general has viewed these kind of just as for throwing. So, but let's expand that, broaden that knowledge, broaden that base to include ground fighting as well. Okay, that being said, let's look at the three and a half elements, the three basic ones, and then an extra one that I think is of great importance that we should include as well. I might add also, before I start, if you want a good reference material, I discuss this quite a bit in my books, Winning on the Mat and Coaching on the Mat. Winning on the Mat you can get from Turtle Press. Go to www.turtlepress.com. That's Winning on the Mat. And I think we have a few copies at our online Welcome Mat store as well. But you can get my book, Coaching on the Mat, at www.welcomematstore.com. And of course, other authors, Jeff Gleason has done a considerable amount of work in this, and other people have as well. So, I'm not the only one, obviously, that's written everything on it lately, but I would, there are some great reference materials out there, and I would use them if I were you, so to add to what I'm going to talk about today. And by the way, everything I'm talking about today, I've mentioned in my books, but I did want to do a video on this because I think it's important enough to cut a video on this for this particular subject. So let's look at the three and a half elements of throwing and ground fighting, any way of applying a technique. Let's look at what they mean. And I'm a big believer, if you've read any of my stuff before or seen any of my videos or trained with me at any point, I'm a big believer in knowing what the Japanese means. I didn't invent this stuff. I didn't make this stuff up. In fact, it was Jigoro Kano, although he spoke fluent English, by the way, and kept a lot of his personal notes in English. He nonetheless developed these concepts, as did other Japanese masters, developed these concepts in the Japanese language. So, and they gave them Japanese nomenclature initially, and through the years they've been used. And there's a good reason for this, is because they really do describe what we're doing from both a historical sense and also in actual practice. So I would highly recommend, now again, I don't speak Japanese, but I guess I speak judo or I speak jujitsu. So I have a real in-depth knowledge, as I hope you do or will develop an in-depth knowledge of the Japanese terminology and phraseology and wording that we use in the martial arts, because they do directly affect how we actually the conceptualize and practice. So the theory and practice of what we're doing every day on the mat leads directly to what it means. Okay, so they say words do have meaning. They really do. So let's look at Kazushi, the first element. Kuzushi means actually to break something down, to break something. It also means, in another sense, from a physical sense, to lose one's shape or lose one's control of one's body. Okay, so that's kind of an obscure meaning, but the main meaning is to break something. And when Kano, I think he developed this concept, by the way, Jigoro Kano did, so let's give him full credit for it. When he developed this concept, he wanted to not just use brute force in throwing someone to the ground, and then applying, as well as his ground fighting, not just use brute force, but use skill. How can he consistently use skill to defeat an opponent? Well, that's Kazushi, the concept of Kazushi. Basically, we say you're breaking one's balance, okay? But in real effect, you are controlling his body. You are controlling his movement. So good Kazushi, say in a standing sense and throwing, is controlling the movement, is good movement. You really can't have good Kazushi usually and most often without good movement. So good posture, good spatial awareness, good proximity between you and your opponent, your pace, how fast you move, how slow you move about the mat. And again, it goes back to good posture, how close your hips and shoulders are in relation to your opponent, how you grip him, how you control the grip and the actually physically grabbing him. These are all elements of Kazushi. So good Kazushi is wholly dependent upon good control of movement. Okay, and if you've seen other videos that I've done and read anything that I've written, I'm a firm believer in controlling the situation as much as possible. The old saying, control the position, get the submission. That's the case here as well with Kazushi. So Kazushi is literally breaking something down and controlling the movement. Okay, whether it's standing or on the ground. So standing is quite obvious. Okay, we how you move, how you do a sliding foot sweep, whatever, soinagi, sometimes a great throw, moving into it with breaking his balance initially by good control of his movement, but also on the ground. Remember, Kuzushi means to actually break something or break something down. Well, I use a phrase years ago. I picked up on this phrase, stole it from wrestling, was a breakdown. So whenever you take an opponent from a stable to an unstable position, whether it's standing or in this particular case we're talking about now in ground fighting, newaza, that's Kazushi. That's Kazushi. So you can use Kazushi in ground fighting as well as standing. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk about in this video is a big deal in doing this video, because a lot of people who've been around judo a long time, unfortunately, don't look at you can control Kazushi or use Kazushi on the mat. Anytime you're breaking an opponent down from a stable to an unstable position, that is good Kazushi in newaza or standing. Okay, so when we do a forearm near leg breakdown or a belt Nelson, or we do something where we turn our opponent onto his back or flatten him out onto his belly and expose him, put him down, we can get a rear naked choke, Hadaka Jime. We break him down and control his movement, control his body. That is good Kazushi. So apply Kazushi to your ground fighting as well. Okay. All right. The second element is Tsukuri. Tsukuri. Tsukuri means to form or to build, to develop something. Okay. In a standing sense, and we as I've often told my beginning students, Kazushi means break the balance. Tsukuri means to fit in. Well, yeah, you could say it does mean to fit in, fit your body into the correct position to throw his body. In the ground fighting situation, newaza, fit your body into the correct position to control his body further, to gain better control of him, okay, to initiate an actual attack, okay. So you're building something. So Kazushi, we break it down first. In Tsukuri, we build something different. And what we're building different is my body fitting into my opponent's body after controlling with Kazushi so I can throw him. or after I've broken him down in a newaza situation with good Kazushi, I will then start to apply, fit my body in the proper position to either hold him or do an arm lock, a leg lock, choke, whatever it may be that I'm pursuing on the ground. So Tsukuri is to build your own technique. So Kazushi, break down his resistance, break down his control, break down his balance and posture. Okay, control his posture is very important. Tsukuri, now I build my own building. I make my own attack. Okay, so that's what Tsukuri means. Okay, Kake is the third one. Kake literally means to attack. That's what it means. It means to physically attack something. Okay, to execute something, to get it done. All right. So Kake is the attack. All right. Well, when Jigoro Kano developed these three concepts, Kuzushi, Tsukuri, Kake, the Kake he took to mean not just attacking, but finishing the move, following through. And unfortunately, through the years, a lot of people have failed to really follow through after that Kake. But we'll talk about that quickly here in a moment. Kake, like I said, is to attack. So after I break his balance by moving him, and after I, control his movement, and then I fit in my body, Tsukuri, okay, and then I Kake, I throw, I attack. On the ground, I break him down from a stable to an unstable position. He's on elbows and knees. I do a forearm near leg breakdown, for example, a standard breakdown used often in all fighting sports. Forearm near leg breakdown, boom, I turn him onto his back, primarily onto his back. I've broken him down, Kazushi. I then attack further. I build my own. I move into position where I position my body in such a way that I can now pin him or hold him or do another move of some type where I can secure a submission technique or finishing hold. That is the Tsukuri. The Kake is actually sinking it in and applying it. Okay, so in a ground fighting sense, I'm holding him. Okay, I've initiated the hold. I've attacked him. In a throw, as anybody who does judo knows this, or sambo, after we break the balance and after we fit in, then we execute or throw. We attack with the move, whatever it may be. We actually throw him. But we have to follow through as well. And this leads us to the fourth element, which is Kime, K-I-M-E, Kime. And Kime means to make sure. That's what it means. It means to make sure. I'm making sure. I'm settling the score. Okay? It also can mean to focus on something. So when you focus in or you settle in on it. And so here's an analogy. A golfer, when he tees up, I'm not a golfer, but it's a great analogy, okay? He's, teeing off, okay? Wham, he hits the ball, okay? He's got good movement. He hits the ball. He just doesn't stop. When he swings the club doesn't stop as it strikes the ball. He continues following through with his swing. That's what Kime is. When I'm throwing someone, I've broken his balance, I fit in, I've executed the throw, I've attacked, okay? Now, to make sure he's down, I follow through completely to make sure he goes to the ground, okay? That's what a lot of Japanese called makikomi. And makikomi means to actually apply a wraparound movement. Maki means to wrap, okay? It means to entwine. And komi is the application of it. So when someone does a makikomi throw, they are actually following through to the mat and pretty much landing on their opponent or landing to the side of their opponent, where they don't just stand there and throw and stay remaining upright. So that's what a makikomi is, and that's another way of saying Kime, but Kime really gives it more direction in what we're doing. So it's really a third and a half element of Kazushi, Tsukuri, Kake, 1, 2, 3. The third and a half element is Kime, the follow through, to make sure. So I throw my opponent. He goes down to the ground. I make sure he lands hard and with control, because I want to control him after I throw him. And I want to control how he lands. So I just don't, if I just did Kake and just threw, and he landed any old way, and I didn't follow through to the ground to make him land where I wanted him to, then it's not a complete throw. And also, once he is down, now I can follow through with an arm lock, a pin, whatever it may be, a hold down, time hold of some type. But I can finish him on the ground. It's finishing the move. It's settling it. So Kime can also mean to finish it. That's one thing that separates judo throwing from, let's say, throwing in wrestling. Because in wrestling, it's very linear. In judo, we stay round often when we throw. Always when we throw, really. So almost always, I would suppose. But say we throw someone with a soenagi over the back shoulder type throw. Bam, we hit. When we continually roll onto him, landing onto him, but still in such a way that we maintain control. We don't just throw and stop. Okay, so that's what Kime is. So that's that third and a half element of these 3.5 elements of throwing and ground fighting as well. The Kime, in a ground fighting sense, is to follow through to make sure. Let's say I roll him over, I trap his arm. Which would be another way of saying Tsukuri. Okay, I'm trapping his arm, saying a Jujigatami situation. I want that arm, and I roll him over. I trap his arm, and I apply it. I do the Kake. I actually attack, and I pull his arm, lever his arm free, and then I pry it, and I really arch my hips, do everything right, and I finish it so I get the tap out. I don't just straighten his arm and let it go and be happy with that. I finish the move. I settle it. I make sure. That's what Kime is. So, recap. Kazushi, break him down, breaking his balance, controlling his movement, often with good use of your own movement, okay? To take him from a stable to an unstable position, okay? Kuzushi. Number 2, Tsukuri, to make sure, to form, to build. I'm building my own technique. I'm applying my own technique. I'm fitting my body into the correct position to make it work for me. Okay, that's Tsukuri. The third one, Kake, to attack, to go for it, to execute, to do it. The fourth one, the third and a half, is Kime, to make sure, to finish it, to focus my efforts, to finish it, to make sure it's settled. So those are the 3.5 elements of every successful attack. If you want to include the Kime and the Kake and say it's all inclusive, kind of looked at it that way, that's fine. That's great. This is my interpretation of it. This is how I coach it for the people who train with me. And I think the 3.5 to 4 elements really describe what happened in every attack, whether it's on the standing in a throwing situation or on the ground in a newaza or ground fighting situation. So that's it for now on Kazushi, Tsukuri, Kake, and Kime. And I hope you enjoyed this. And I would say for any future reference, again, I reiterate, winning on the mat or coaching on the mat. I also talk about this to some degree in my book, Sambo Encyclopedia, and also in my book, Throws and Takedowns, also published by Turtle. So that is it for this one. And thank you very much. I'll see you next time.